You know, I think I like Canadian metal. Hey buds, old lady drivers in Rainbow's Gold here. Canada has made quite the presence in the heavy metal genre. I mean, just look at the metal archives.
Holy moly.
Of course, there are plenty of good and bad in that number, but there is something about those good Canadian metal bands that I just can't resist. Whether it's the big four Canadian thrash metal like Razor and Sacrifice, or even lesser known Canadian metal classics like Piledriver, not to mention the war metal pioneer Blasphemy, Canadian metal really is spectacular. Now, let's first focus on that Canadian thrash metal. You may be familiar with the Big Four of thrash metal, or perhaps the Big Four of German thrash metal. Well, Canada has their own Big Four of thrash metal, those bands being Razor, Sacrifice, Annihilator, and Voivod. Razor I've spoken about before, but Sacrifice I have not, and why I have not mentioned this band is completely beyond me, because Sacrifice is great. Their first album was very raw with a lot of energy, but I found myself drawn more to their second album and beyond that sometimes even reminds me of later Death, especially Soldiers of Misfortune. Tying it all together, Sacrifice has one of my favorite sounding vocalists in all of thrash. Just try and tell me the vocals on Necronomicon don't make you feel that mosh pit energy. Also in the Big Four is Annihilator, which has always been my least favorite of the four, but I do very much like Never Neverland. I see them as the Anthrax equivalent of the Canadian Big Four. Not bad, not great, just good. Other relatively lesser known Canadian thrash bands includes the likes of the blackened thrash metal of Infernal Majesty, the over-the-top speed metal of Piledriver, and the incredible influence in the development of the thrash genre that is Exciter. I find all of these Canadian thrash bands have a different atmosphere compared to other regional scenes, a different approach that I very much love. It could be the different influences. Perhaps speed metal had a greater presence here than in other scenes, but I find something sets aside the Canadian thrash metal bands from others that make them easy to identify. I don't have the best understanding of, actual chord progression and song structure and all that, but there is something unique going on here, I tell you what. Of course, within the regional scene of Canadian metal, there is an even more regional scene within that regional scene, Quebecois metal. Now, as someone from Western Canada, I don't know much about Quebec. I mean, I went there for a school trip in middle school, and I quite like the architecture, but beyond that, nothing really deeper than surface level. However, considering all the amazing bands I have found from Quebec, such as Voivod, Gorguts, and Oblivion, I now know something more in depth about Quebec, that its metal scene is damned good. To speak more on these Quebecois bands, if you follow me on Twitter, then you will know how much I love Voivod. And as one of the Big Four, you know they are good. They are markedly more progressive than their thrash peers, with a science fiction twist that fits so well into progressive thrash. It's weird. In terms of stories, I've always been a fantasy over sci-fi person, but when it comes to metal, I find the fantasy stance kinda bland. Give me some spacey sci-fi metal though, and oh boy, it'll hit the spot. Those dissonant riffs that pervade Voivod's work are uniquely Voivod. Piggy was truly like no other. When it comes to death metal, I like it like I like my Dex. Tech. Gorguts is a Quebec technical death metal band that I consider to be like Canada's Death. Now, since Death is one of my favorite bands, you would probably think Gorguts is one of my favorite Canadian metal bands. However, I simply have not listened to enough of Gorguts' discography to really make up my mind on them. But from what I've listened, I already know that I quite like them. Finally, the severely unknown band Oblivion has been one of my favorite discoveries from the land of poutine. I mean, I only learned about them through a Darkthrone song. For how good they are, they should be common metal band knowledge. But alas, Darkthrone must be the messenger. Oblivion is something of an oddity. It's, from what I can understand, a progressive tech death thrash band. You don't see that every day.
It's the dynamo!
But oh, how I wish you did, because this is some quality stuff. Harsh but understandable vocals, death metal power, thrash energy, progressive creativity. What more could a metalhead want? If I were to put the Canadian metal bands I have listened to in a personal top 5 list as of March 2021, it would look something like this. Voivod and Razor would be tied for first place. Those two being in that auspicious position for two very different reasons. See, I love Razor because it is pure thrash and it does that very well. No fanciful time signatures or lyrical themes, just metal that is hard and fast. Voivod, on the other hand, is all about the fanciful time signatures and lyrical themes with plenty of experimentation on top, which I quite like as well. So I decided that, like taco shells, why not both? Next is Sacrifice, I'd say, then Oblivion, Piledriver would usually follow, and finally Strapping Young Lad / Devin Townsend. Sorry Annihilator, Never Neverland is good, but not good enough to get into the top 5. You get out of here and eat your craft dinner. I've spoken about Strapping Young Lad in a previous video, so I won't repeat myself. However, I will repeat the fact that Ziltoid the Omniscient is one of my favorite concept albums ever, and I will keep repeating it until everyone listens to it. It's that good. To end this video, music is representative of where it comes from. When a band you really like comes from your country, you rally behind it. You go, see, we've got something great here. Of course, you in particular don't own the music, but you feel a connection to it due to its origins. You support it because it tells the world, see, look at this great music we can play. It may seem a bit arrogant, but I don't see it that way. Sortilège, a French metal band, has given me more an interest in France and French culture than 4 years of French class. People like good music, and when that music comes from their own, they are happy to share it. It's the positive side of pride. That's why I love Canadian metal. It's the connection between home and beyond. It's also just really good. Sorry about the less frequent videos. University has got me locked up at home writing more papers than Stephen King on speed. If you do want to see more of these videos, as infrequent as they may be, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. It means a lot.